Hello and good morning to today's session. Today's session will be discussing more about how CISOs can manage incidents because the technical competence of a CISO can be evaluated best on how he or she can manage cybersecurity incidents, showing leadership not just to top management but also to every staff. When a crisis occurs, the true leadership skill of the Chief Information Security Officer will be revealed. You have to be calm. You have to show that you have the skill to manage these incidents and come out better. And that is why this session is very relevant. If you have questions, you can drop it on the chat box. We'll try our best to answer as much as we can. And if you are yet to join the WhatsApp group, we'll also be dropping the link so you can also join the WhatsApp group. So let's get started. As a CISO, can you make decisions that are calm? Can you make decisions that will protect the business, that will protect the interest of the business under pressure? Because when there are uncertainties, leadership is tested. And that is what distinguishes a skillful CISO from anyone just filling the role. So the key question here is, what is your leadership strength when a cyber attack occurs? Because if you don't have what it takes, you would make decisions that will go wrong and make your top management see you as incompetent. So this training will give you that leadership experience to manage any form of cyber attack or data security breach, because competence should also be evaluated by how you manage your emotions at critical moments. Just as I said earlier, your technical competence will not be sufficient when you have to manage an incident. For regulated institutions, most especially financial services institutions, incident will be treated as a consumer protection failure if it is not managed properly, because you owe your customers that trust, and that will lead to your market confidence from investors, critical stakeholders, regulatory bodies. So a CISO performance during incidents will also be judged based on the regulatory expectations. What are the regulatory expectations? What does the board expect from you? How will customer take these incidents? So when we talk about incident response, this is simply governance in motion. So the CISO plays multiple roles, and these roles come to bear at critical moments. One of which is this leadership role in time of a cyber attack. Now, planning for incident would be one of the priority lists for a CISO who intends to be a top player, because You could experience an attack that is familiar based on your past experience, and you have the skill set to manage it. How about an attack that you've not prepared for? Most likely, that will show your weakness. So, the Chief Information Security Officer should be able to simulate potential cyber risk, such as unauthorized access to customer personal information. Also, looking at your payment platform, you should also simulate a scenario that leads to compromise. How would I manage it? How will I get the third party vendor to support me in this critical moment? If this incident is as a result of an insider threat, how do I manage privilege access? So, having simulated some of all these potential cyber attack, you will gain an experience that you may not get from any book or training, because this will be practical. So, as a CISO, you need to simulate this experience so you can acquire this skill. So, if something similar happens, you already know how to communicate this, how to resolve this, and how to show leadership. Now, you would make decisions under pressure, no doubt. So, during the incident, the CISO must decide, I do not have incomplete information, but I must take action. There will be pressure from your board, there will be pressure from customers, there will be pressure from regulatory bodies. How do you manage all these conflicts without compromising your leadership style? How do you show you have what it takes at critical times? Because this is what makes board trust you more. You could ask yourself, what is the worst case business and regulatory impact if we delay notifying customers or regulatory bodies? What decisions can we make that can affect our brand? And what assumptions may be necessary to communicate this crisis without compromising on regulatory reporting timeframe? So, during this crisis, you must have a command structure, just like in the military. There has to be a command structure. Most times, you may play the command leader, but you can't play the command leader and also play the foot soldier. So, you may need your legal team to support you at this point. So, you don't make any statement that goes contrary to regulatory guidelines. You also need your operation unit to support you, because they know the critical applications that should keep running for customers to still have some access if that will not pose any security risk. You also need some PR here. So you will need your corporate communication lead or a representative to help out with communication. And most importantly, you need your risk management team, so you could be able to ascertain all the potential risk and mitigate them before they are exploited further. So you need that command structure and you need leadership to drive it. It's very important. The board may not be very particular about the cyber incidents, at the first instance. But that does not mean you should not escalate it to them. And there are thresholds you should have before now that triggers you to notify management to get the board involved because the board has a role to play. So some of those thresholds could be once it is evidence that customer data has been compromised, management needs to get the board involved. Once there is fraud or a financial loss, the board has to get involved. Once the downtime exceeds certain threshold, say 3 to 4 hours, 6 to 12 hours, or 24 hours, depending on your risk tolerance, you have to get the board involved. Once there are regulatory reporting obligations at stake, get the board involved. And if this leads to public exposure, the board has to be involved. So, as the Chief Information Security Officer, you may not depend on management to come up with such policy. You can champion it. Tell them why this is important. Because every company is either being attacked or will be attacked. And you should not shy away from the fact that a day will come when you will need to manage a cybersecurity incident. And how best you manage it will tell the board if they made a good recruitment or not. So, as a CISO, you should prepare for the inevitable. A cyber attack will occur, and we have to be prepared to mitigate it, not just with the technical experience, but also with the leadership experience required. Now, your regulatory body would also be very interested in how the CISO, the board, and management manage this cybersecurity risk. So, the regulatory body, irrespective of the industry, some institutions will have multiple regulatory bodies interested. A fintech or a finance company or a microfinance bank will have the CBN interested. We also have the NDPC interested. So, what will the regulators be looking at? They will look at your preventive controls. As a CISO, you should not just look at having corrective controls. What are the preventive controls? Now, having a preventive control that is effective will also forestall this risk. But some attacks are sophisticated that those controls you've put in place becomes obsolete with time. Also, they will be interested on your speed of detection and how it was escalated. Did you meet the reporting timeline? The central bank expects financial institutions to report cyber attack within 24 hours. The Nigeria Data Protection Commission expects you to report data breaches within 72 hours of you becoming aware. So, what's the quality of your executive oversight? How did management and the board manage this professionally? So, you see that board members need training on cybersecurity risk management, data privacy and data protection, risk management, because primarily this may not be their area of core competence. So, as a CISO, also champion capacity building for the board in this regard. Also, your effectiveness in making sure that customer don't suffer loss. Some people may decide to shut down the server if that's the best action. Some other people may decide to communicate to the customer, but we'll try our best to give you a playbook so that you don't miss out of important things. Because the most important risk you should put at the forefront is if customers lose fund, if customers suffer further loss because of that cyber attack, it's going to affect your brand, it's going to affect your reputation. So you must try as much as possible as the CISO to manage that. No customer suffer further loss. That should be a priority. If you don't manage this incident properly, most likely your financial institution will be sanctioned, and that may also lead to senior management facing enforcement action. And the CISO could also lose credibility because you may decide to go to another company and they'll say, "Oh, where are you coming from? Oh, you are the CISO? Oh, we can't give you a job here because you didn't show leadership." So most times it's not about the company. The CISO has a reputation to protect. Let's paint a scenario that you are the CISO of a financial institution and there was a cyber attack and you managed it, you were able to recover funds. Once you tell that story to another company, what they see is not just a CISO, they see a leader. They see someone who has potential to be a management player. Because technical competence may be easy to get, but leadership might be more difficult. So you should also know your reputation is also at stake as the CISO if things go wrong and you could not manage it properly. So during a crisis, your leadership judgment becomes auditable evidence. What this means is that people don't look at your technical experience at that point. What they are concerned about is how did you show leadership in a way and manner that your emotions don't let you down. Imagine if a CISO is complaining, crying, "Oh, we've been attacked." What do you expect from management? They'll be looking for solution outside the organization immediately because they know they don't have the solution in-house. So during a crisis, your leadership judgment becomes audited. And that is something that gives you a shot at the board or takes you out of the organization. Now, when we want to communicate with the board members and top executive, including the regulatory bodies, what are we concerned about? What should be our key focus? First, you want the board to understand the nature of the incident. By nature of incident, what type of cyber attack is this? Is this a ransomware? Is it an insider threat? Is it a malware? What are the systems and customers affected? What will be the financial exposure? What are the regulatory implications? What are the containment measures we can immediately implement? Because containment is very important, but you may miss out some things if you don't have the right emotions. So decisions when it comes to incident management is more of a leadership edge than technical. So you need to know how to get yourself composed and manage these incidents so that the board can see you as one with experience. So for your Media consideration, you need to talk to your customers so there's no gap, because that will create panic. But when you are communicating with your customers, don't forget that there may be legal requirements, there may be compliance requirements, there may be laid down communication guideline that you need to follow. And that's why you cannot manage it alone. You will need different team members, which I mentioned earlier. You also need to know that your third party and your fintech ecosystem could be of help at this critical moment. Because even if you outsource your core applications out, that does not take away accountability. Your business will be primarily responsible to regulators and customers. So you must find a way of escalating to your vendors this incident immediately so that they can respond within the timeline, and you have documentations to back their findings so you can take action effectively. So your regulatory body will not be concerned about the technology vendor. They will not be concerned about your payment processor. They will not be concerned about your fintech partners. They are about you. And what stands out is the quality of the CISO leadership. Your board and regulators expect you to show strong regulatory literacy. It's not at this point you tell them that you are not aware you were supposed to report within 24 hours. That shows incompetence. And one thing I know about regulators, because I have been able to manage some of these cyber attack in some financial institutions, they want to see you calm. They want to see you aware of your obligations. They are not interested most times in penalizing you. What they want to see is leadership and accountability, because it is a known fact that cyber attack is inevitable. But how do you manage it in a way that what the regulator expects you to do at such times, you have done it? If a regulator come in and say, okay, we discovered customers made complaints and we are here to validate it, and you brought out evidence that, okay, we actually reported this to you, this is the email trail, and after resolving it, these are communications we made to customers. Of course, that is leadership. So don't shy away from the fact that one day you will be in a position to resolve a cyber attack. What you should concern yourself more is, do I have the leadership skill to manage it? Because when you excel in critical moments, the CEO, the board trust you as somebody they can go to. And that will make you have some form of industry recognition, because your CEO may be talking with someone who is also a CEO in another entity, and they say, wow, we had this issue, but this is my IT guy. That guy is a guru. Within 24 hours, we're back running. I never even knew we had backup. So it goes beyond your job role. It gets you industry recognition when you manage cyber risk effectively. So let's look at a playbook on crisis management, especially at the board level. So phase one would look like the initial notification and awareness. So what are we concerned here? First of all, the timeline is within 24 hours, because If you have the right controls, within 24 hours, you should know if you're under attack. So something has happened, but what do we actually do? What do we do at this point? So, what the board wants to achieve at this point is to understand what happened in simple terms, in simple business terms, what actually happened. And they want to confirm if this is a routine issue or a serious crisis. And they will also be happy to know that they have the right people in charge to manage this. Now, this is not when you start telling the board technical things. What you want them to know is this security incident was triggered by A, B, C. These are the systems affected. If a customer data or financial information has been what given to unauthorized users or downloaded to unauthorized users, because an insider threat could also be the reason why you are going through that attack. And if management has taken control of the situation, so that is the key things you want your board members to be interested in. So the next thing is the mindset the board should have. What should be the board mindset, right? What should be the board mindset? The board mindset should be getting control of this incident. The facts may not be available first. That is what is called containment. Containment in cybersecurity. How can we contain this? Because if you get control of the situation, you will get the regulatory body off your neck. Do you treat this crisis as an enterprise level incident or just an isolated incident? And you also need to determine how often we'll be updating the board, because the board member may not be in the country. It's likely. The board member may not be in that city where you have your corporate headquarters. So you need to say, okay, we will be updating them every 2 hours, every 4 hours, every 6 hours, so that they on their own are not getting information from Google and social media. They know what is happening. So when they get a call, they say, no, we're on top of it, or we really don't have the solution and we're looking for help. So that's what you do at the initial notification phase. Please don't forget, if you have questions, drop it on the chat box. We'll try our best to answer as much as we can. As much as we can, we'll answer those questions. So, what do we look at in phase two? Now, phase two happens within 24 to 72 hours because you want to answer the big question. Could this become a regulatory or legal problem? Because it could be that it's just a minor issue, right? But there are times whereby you assume a minor issue, but it has gone beyond being minor to a critical issue. So at this point, even if the incident is small, if you don't do the right thing, it can become big. So the board will try to prevent this incident from becoming a compliance or enforcement failure, but they can't do it without the competence of the CISO and management, because those are the foot soldiers. So they need to protect the institution and directors from avoidable liability. And they also want to ensure that regulators are handled correctly and on time. By that, I mean regulatory bodies are getting updates, regulatory bodies are getting their compliance required data. because once you are having a cyber attack, you become a critical data controller at that point. And if this is not well managed, could also cause the ecosystem to suffer significant loss. So the board should be able to understand if they have violated critical guidelines, like if they have failed to report within the timeline. They also need to get their legal team understand critical obligations, because the IT, the CISO may be more focused on resolving this issue. And if the board is not in the picture, some things may not be done as it should be done. So the board needs to understand they have to also be ready to support management and the CISO at this point. So board has to give approval for reporting these incidents. Board also need to know when we report this incident, how bad does it get? Because they may need to also engage experts if in-house cannot fix this. So these are decisions they should make. So we'll move to the third stage where it becomes a customer and public concern. So the rule here is if customers are affected, then there has to be a need to communicate so that people don't assume. So you cannot communicate to the public without board approval. So the board has to approve communications. Though you may have your PRO team already with templates on how to communicate this, but the board has to give approval. So the board at this stage is more critical about maintaining customer trust and confidence. Avoid panic, misinformation, or reputational damage. And make sure that they have evidence for the forensic investigation so that if for any reason the customer posts anything on social media, they can be able to have informed decision. Because sometimes some customers may be the ones to blow the whistle on social media. If the board has the right information, they can control the narrative. So in phase four, this is where stability comes in, not perfection. Can we keep the business running safely? That should be the critical question. So your critical services must remain available. It's not the time to shut down your social media account. It's not the time to stop your communication. It's not the time to bring down your website if there's no technical need for that. So while you balance security containment, you must also try to ensure that you understand the financial impact of downtime. You want to be able to get the board understand the core systems that are stable, the worst case scenario if there will be total outage, the estimated financial and operational impact, and how effective are backup. Now, the board has to understand that there will be emergency spending and resources. So the board has to give approval for short-term risk to restore services. This is critical. So this takes us to the fifth phase, which is about executive oversight and governance. So if there have been strong leadership, at this point, everything should be calm. So the board typically will give the CISO support if the CISO has shown leadership, so that there's clear authority and accountability. There will be no confusion. There will be no conflict instruction. Director of finance is saying no, we don't have money. Director of operation is saying go ahead and approve. There will be no conflict. And every decision is documented. So if this is done, then we should be able to learn from the experience. So the board has to come up with, what do we fix so this doesn't happen again? So we've been able to resolve this, but what should have been done to avoid that scenario? So at this point, the board has learned from the incident and there's no blame game. There's accountability from stakeholders. Regulators now see that you you've managed the situation. It's no longer a critical ecosystem issue. You know what went wrong. You are not assuming at this point. Customers has built trust because you communicated properly. Your third parties have also shown their relevance because they've supported you. So at this point, you want to update your policies based on what you've learned. You want to increase your budget or even reduce budget if you discover that some things you had been spending money on were not effective, and you want to approve remediation plan so that next time you are more prepared. So this is just a blueprint to be more effective as a CISO. So in summary, phase one deals with getting control and making sure there's clarity of the incidents. Phase two deals with avoiding regulatory mistake. Phase three deals with protecting customers and trust. Phase four deals with keeping the business running. The fifth phase is about leadership discipline. And the sixth phase is about strengthening the institution. So this is a playbook for the CISO to be able to guide the board to be more effective. So one thing a CISO should take out from this is, if you go for all the trainings and your board members are not trained, it's not the best. So try as much as possible to get your board members to attend cybersecurity training, risk management training, data protection training, so they can understand what a cyber risk looks like, not just imagine it. So we'll go for quiz, but as usual, we'll take questions. So if you have questions, please drop them on the chat box. We'll try our best to answer as much as we can. Okay, someone is saying, what of yesterday class video or recording? We didn't get it. This training is done on YouTube. So once you go to our page on YouTube, it's there. It will be there for life as long as YouTube exists. So you just need to go back to YouTube, look at our videos, go to the live session, you would see it. So that has been taken care of. Please, more questions. Please, more questions. Please keep your questions coming in so that we can be able to wrap up early enough. Okay, let's take some of the quiz. I think that should help us, pending when we have more questions. So the first question is this: during a major cyber incident in a regulated financial institution, which factor is most critical in evaluating a CISO's performance? So we have option A, B, C, and D. So you can drop your answer. Is it option A? Is it option B? Is it option C or D? I can say option C. Okay. So what's the answer? Let's see. The answer is C. Because at executive and board level, CISOs are evaluated on decision quality, leadership under pressure, and governance discipline, not purely technical execution. Thank you. So there's a question here. Mm, Having done all you should in terms of keeping your resources and infrastructure safe, are you still vulnerable to cyber attack? The answer is yes. There is no 100% secured system. Now, let us imagine that your laptop has a password, it has antivirus, right? But if you misplace that laptop, right, due to theft, it's going to lead to data breach. So you did everything right. You have a password, you have antivirus on that laptop, but it gets missing and leads to data breach. So a system will always have a vulnerability, a threat, or a risk attached to it. So we'll go to the next question. Which incident must be escalated to the board and regulators under the executive severity model? Which incident must be escalated to the board and regulators under the executive severity model? So keep your answers coming in. Mr. Prisha, I see you. Thanks for joining in. Babatunde, thank you. Mr. Tolu, thank you. I know it's a weekend, but we have to keep learning. So, what's the most best answer to this? Okay, I see option C. Okay, it's actually correct. Any incident involving customer data compromise or regulatory exposure is classified as high or critical, which requires executive and board level escalation. So there's another question. Can we get the slides? Yes, you can get the slides. You'll get an email on how to access the slide. So that email should come in on Monday. So all the slides we have used for the trainings for the last 3 days, you'll be given an instruction on how to get it. Also, how to get a certificate for this training. Because when you operate in a regulated environment, evidence of training is very relevant. And these trainings will also build your skill, most especially when these trainings are free. You understand, you are learning but you are not paying for it. So why should you not want to get a certificate for it? So you'll be given an instruction on how to get your certificate if you so wish. However, this training will help CISOs because these are not topics that we discuss every day. So if you attend this 3 days training, you would have learned one or two critical things. We've talked about shadow IT, we've talked about risk, we've talked about incident response. And later today, we also have another training by 2 p.m. That will wrap up the 3 days intensive capacity building for CISOs. So if I were you, I would get my certificate to show evidence I have equipped myself with a skill, especially now we are starting a new year. So the next question is this: when making crisis decisions with incomplete information, which question should guide a CISO immediate judgment when making crisis decisions with incomplete information? Which question should guide a CISO's immediate judgment? So we have option A, B, C, and D. Okay, Mr. Didiron, thank you so much. You're also here. Option C. Let's see. Yeah, that's correct. Executive and regulators assess risk informed judgment, especially the ability to anticipate downside consequences of delayed decision. Thank you. So the next question is, which action is appropriate for a board during the first 24 hours of a cyber incident? Okay, which action is inappropriate? Yeah, sorry about that. Which action is inappropriate for a board during the first 24 hours of a cyber incident? Which action is inappropriate? Which action is inappropriate? Okay, there's also another question. Can we be added to the CISO platform? Yeah, I will drop the link to the WhatsApp group once we are done with the quiz session. There's also another question. Can you send me your physical training calendar for 2026? Yeah, I'll send that to you personally. I have your email. So, for people who want to also learn about data protection, we have a training coming up in Abuja and Lagos, and that will also be communicated via the WhatsApp group. So, for Abuja, that will be done between January 26th to January 30th. That will be the Data Protection Officer Certification course. And that is also relevant because regulatory bodies like the NDPC requires institutions to have a certified data protection officer. So that is also something you should look out for. That will be between 26th of January to 30th of January 2026. It's a 5-day intensive course. For Lagos, that will be in February between 9th to 13th. That will be communicated through the WhatsApp group, so you could participate. So let's see what the answer is for this. The answer is also C. So today is a C day. Mm. Board must avoid micromanagement. You see, there are some board that micromanage, and that's not the best. You need to delegate, but also monitor and have oversight. So let's go to the fifth question. Why is incorrect incident severity classification considered a governance failure rather than a technical error? Why is incorrect incident severity classification, we talked about this yesterday, considered a governance failure than a technical error? Okay, I can see option D. I can see C. C. So the answer is C. Regulators focus on timelines, escalation, discipline, and decision rationale. Misclassification expose institutions and directors to sanctions and liability. So thank you very much for paying attention. Don't forget, we'll be here by 2 p.m. for the final session for this 3 days intensive training. Meanwhile, I've dropped the WhatsApp group. You can click on the link to join if you are not there. If for any reason there are questions you still have that you've not dropped, you can also drop it on the WhatsApp group. We have admins there to answer those questions. So thank you very much. So we meet by 2 p.m. and I hope you join so that we can keep learning. Cybersecurity is very important because everything is now digitalized, and having the skill set to perform your CISO role will give you not just your board approval, but the ecosystem will know you, and that will also support your career growth. So keep learning and keep improving. Thank you.